Hello there and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And today I bring you a watch review. And if you like classically styled, elegant field watches with a certain leaning towards the watches of the latter half of the 20th century, you're in the right place, because today's watch is the Kuoe Old Smith 90002. Now, that's not a name which you'll probably be familiar with. Kuoe is a small microbrand. It hails from the historic Japanese city of Kyoto. And the founder is a chap called Uchimara, who was in England, I believe, doing some studies a number of years ago, over a decade ago. And he found himself being drawn towards the vintage military field style watches which were issued to British personnel who were in the military. And this sparked an interest in that design of wristwatch. He ended up going into the watch industry, where he worked for quite some time, before founding his own brand in 2020. And this Old Smith model is not the first watch, it's the second offering from Kuoe. There are a number of different styles of watch, but for me, this field style watch was definitely one which sparked my interest. Now, this watch was provided for me as a sample by Kuoe, although they've not had any editorial input in what I'm about to say. So utterly independent. Important that you know that. The Old Smith is very much, as you can see from its design, inspired by those classic military watches from the latter half of the 20th century. So very much got that oldie worldy design thing going on. But I know you want to see the watch, so let me bring the camera in and let you have a look at what it's all about. Okay, so here we are. This is the Old Smith 90002, a polished stainless steel case, as you can see, 316L industry standard, and the dial here is in ivory, although it is also available in blue, green and black, and they have a matte finish to the dial, so they make it nice and easy on the eye, particularly when married with those applied numerical indices. So easy to read. I have to say, this watch, when you glance down at it, there's no mistaking what the time is. The handset is orange, filled with a luminescent material, and you will also see a little orange square at the base of every indice, which is also filled with luminescence, although it is fair to say the lume is weak on this watch. It doesn't hang around for too long. Also in the dial at the 3 o'clock position, you will see the date window, and the date is very small. It is difficult to read that at any given time, I have to admit, but it has got a date function. Now, the size of the piece is 35 millimeters. Something classic really for a field watch. That is not small. It is what one would expect of a field watch. Inside the watch, there is a Miyota, a 8215 module. Now, Miyota, of course, Japanese brand, owned by Citizen. This particular module is credited as delivering a -20 to +40 seconds performance per day. Actually, my understanding is that it does perform far better than that, but still entirely acceptable really. We've got a domed mineral crystal, as you can see. Obviously, we would prefer to have sapphire crystal, but this is a not super expensive watch. We get what we get. It has a screw down threaded crown, which gives us 100 meters of water resistance, which is great. It's got a 40-hour power reserve, and it is seen here on a NATO strap. In fact, it's delivered to us with 2 NATO straps, this black one, as you can see, and there's also a sort of green, olive green coloured one as well. So easy to change, only threaded through. On the back, not much engraving, I'll just show you. Very little engraving, just the sort of the identity of this particular watch and some, manufacturing information there, nothing too exciting. So, aside being 35 millimeters across the dial, it is 12.5 millimeters thick. So it's not a small, slim little gem at all. There is a presence with this. Lug to lug, so from one side to the other of the piece, 41 millimeters. So, you know, a dainty watch, easily worn by anybody of any sized wrist. And its lug size, 18 millimeters. So if you should wish to change this out for different straps, different NATO straps, it's going to be easy to find something that fits. And yeah, lovely, lovely piece. I think you'll agree. A classic field watch, which it is hard to take issue with. Okay, so what does the watch feel like when on the wrist? And let's put it on the wrist. I've been wearing this watch off and on for a couple of weeks now, and I think I have, you know, really had a good wearing experience, wearing it to work, wearing it in the woods, and it is fair to say this is exactly what it purports to be. It is a field watch. It is light, only 49 grams on the NATO strap as supplied. It disappears on the wrist, which is what you want with a practical utilitarian working watch. You want a watch which is there when you need to look at it and give you the time. And with the ivory dial, I think this Old Smith really delivers in that regard, because it is so easy to tell the time when you look down at this piece. So for me, it works beautifully. To give you an idea of the cost, which is important so you know where this watch is coming in. This watch costs £220 if purchased from the Kuoe website, which equates to just under $300 US and around about 260 euro. So we're not talking luxury high-end, we're talking about good quality, practical daily watch. So hard to argue at that price. So what else can I tell you about this watch? Well, to be honest, it's one of those watches which you wear and it doesn't stand out. It just does its job so well. When it comes to operating the watch, the crown is easy to grip, it's easy to operate. When you wind the watch by hand, you know, the feeling, the sensation of the movement is good. There are some elements which are not great, and I'll talk about those in a moment, but generally speaking, this watch has met my expectation as a nice quality field watch, which actually pick the right colour dial, and it can cross the boundaries of being a watch you could wear, you know, with a suit, if you're so inclined. It's waterproof with the NATO strap, you can wear it in the pool. You're also able to spec this watch with a bracelet, a stainless steel bracelet, or in fact a sapphire crystal as well, directly from the company. So should you wish to spend a little bit more money and have a watch which is that much more capable, it is within your gift to do that. But for me, I don't think I'd bother. I quite like this standard model. It just does its job really quite well. But no watch is perfect, and certainly not an entry-level watch at this sort of price point. You wouldn't expect it to be. So let me tell you of some of the things which I think are good and bad about this watch. On a Pro, it's definitely comfortable, disappears on the wrist, and on the NATO strap, you know, you hardly know it's there, which is great. Its appearance, it is a lovely watch indeed to look at. It's classical, it is elegant, it certainly has a throwback to the last century where watches were simple and of a simple size. It's practical. You know, when I glance down at it, those applied indices, those numerical markers, I can read the time immediately. This is not a watch you've got to squint at and see what's going on the dial to know the time. It's just there for you straight away when you look at it. And the other thing, the other pro for me, is the size. 35 millimeters is perfect for my 6.5 inch wrist, although I would say it says 35 millimeters. I own a couple of watches which are 36 millimeters. I've got a Rolex Datejust and a Rolex Explorer, and to be honest, this feels larger than those at 36. So this wears big for a 35 millimeter watch. So don't be concerned by the thought that, oh, I'd never buy a 35 millimeters, it's too small. Remember, field watches are meant to be practical, utilitarian, and easily worn. This ticks that box for sure. But just as there are pros, there most certainly are cons as well. For me, the cons are the mineral crystal, all right? Mineral crystal is easily scratched, and I would prefer a sapphire crystal. So that is possible to have that on the piece. You can spec that, but yeah, that's one of the negatives for me. The other negative, the rotor action inside the watch is noisy, all right? When I flick my wrist, I can actually hear the rotor spinning around. Of course, it's doing its job. It's winding the watch for us. That's how a automatic mechanical watch works. It winds itself by the movement of your wrist. But this watch, you can hear it when it does that. Hey, you might like that. For me, just a little bit unusual. I mention it as a con. The luminescence is weak. That is fair to say. Yes, it has got lume in the handset and in those tiny dots around the dial, but it's very weak and it doesn't hang around long. So if you're somebody who expects your lume to last for hours and depend upon it, if you're out in the field with your field watch, this watch, the lume is towards the poor end of the market. And what I would also say when talking about the dial and its characteristics, the date window is rather small, right? I'm 52 years of age. Last year, I started having to wear spectacles for reading. And I have to say, glancing down at the dial, I find it very difficult to read the date without a lot of concentration and a bit of moving the distance of the watch from my face so I can bring the date into focus. So it is quite small, it is fair to say. And finally, the last thing I would say is also something I mentioned in the pros, and that is the size. You might think that 35mm is rather small for a watch in the modern era, where we're increasingly seeing men's watches over 40mm in size. That is personal preference. I mention it because some people will think 35mm is small. For me, I wouldn't do so. I think 35 is ideal for a practical field watch, which is designed to disappear on the wrist. Okay, my final summary, my final observations of the Kuoe Old Smith 90002 field watch. I have loved this watch. I've enjoyed wearing it. I have to tell you, my wife tried it on and she said, I really love this watch because of its size. It's something which looks perfectly at home on a female wrist, and I think if I'm not careful, this watch will disappear into my wife's collection. So there is that advantage to it, but it goes to show, having a third-party comment to you saying that is a lovely looking watch, it's always pleasant to hear, isn't it, when you've just bought a new watch or taken delivery of one. And yeah, it's classic, it is elegant. It throws me back to the 1950s, 1960s, where most men's watches looked like this. You can put whatever NATO strap or other strap you want on this watch, and I think it will only add to its elegance. So for me, at the price point of about £220, I think it's pitched about right. I don't think I would pay much more than that for this watch, but I think that's a really good price for what we have here. And yeah, I've enjoyed wearing it, and I'm going to continue doing so because I love its look, I love its classic elegance, and of course that works for me because I'm a classically elegant chap. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video and the review of the Kuoe Old Smith watch. If you have, I would encourage you to give us a thumbs up, and by all means subscribe to the channel if you're not already a member of our community. And you can even practically support the channel by buying me a coffee. You'll find a link to the Buy Me a Coffee page in the show notes below. So until the next time, keep telling the time in your life with a stylish wristwatch. Take care, and I will see you again very soon.